Hello, or should I say, the board says hello. I'm so severance pilled, as we'll get into, but welcome back for the third YouTube installment. Are you excited to see me? I'm excited to see you. I'm especially excited to see you because let me tell you something that I learned. Okay, you can see the sweatpants on the bottom. I'm gonna try to sort of artfully get up. Oh, that hurts the surgical wound. Okay. Uploading to YouTube was such a bitch. Oh my god, it was so bad. It wouldn't accept my video for like 2 days. It slowed views down. I was so mortified. So I'm hoping that this doesn't happen this time. But wow, that app, the iMovie software, really does not like me. And it's quite embarrassing and also quite distressing. But hopefully, by the end of this, I've learned to be a better video editor. It's not as hard as I thought it was. That being said, I'm not making really crazy, well-edited content. But I have a lot to talk about this week. We have a lot up on the docket and an unlimited amount of time to get into it because my battery is fully charged today. So without further ado, let's start recording. The board says hello, and if you're listening on YouTube, you just heard me make that joke in the introduction. Happy belated Valentine's Day, and welcome back, you guys, to the One Take Wonder podcast. I know you just listened to the intro, but I just want to thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to get into it. I'm so excited to talk about all the things this week. We have so much. Valentine's Day, Kendrick's performance, Severance. I cannot stop thinking about Severance. I liked Severance when I started watching it 4 weeks ago, but it did used to make me cry. But the past week of, having surgery and then consequently not going to work for the past week, I'm going back to work for the first time Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm so Severance pilled. I'm listening to every single theory. I'm creating theories. You can see some of my theories on TikTok. I won't spoil them here in case you haven't caught up to episode 5, but oh my god, it's so good. It's one of the best shows out there. If you don't have Apple TV, please sign up for a free trial and get one because you'll have time to binge all of the past episodes. It's so good. It's one of the best things I've ever watched. And I've been saying that about a lot of shows recently. Arcane is one of the best things I've ever watched. Succession, Interview with the Vampire, Severance, P-Valley. Oh my god, I cannot wait for P-Valley to come back. If I have to go to Chucalissa, Mississippi myself and kill Derek, I will. But let's get into the real topics. It's February 17th. Valentine's Day was just this weekend. And how serendipitous for Valentine's Day to be on a Friday and then have the whole weekend with your boo. Or maybe not your boo, because maybe you're single and you're getting the sense that everyone's being mean to you. And I'm here to tell you, you're right. This is my most core belief, which I was kind of talking about on live. I went live just to show myself, getting ready and putting on makeup for this episode. Doing my hair, all that stuff. And so somebody asked me to comment. I guess there's a big TikTok creator out there who is very publicly in a happy, healthy relationship, and she's really pretty and he's really pretty. I think this kind of matters. And she said, if you're single, you just need to love yourself. And everyone's like, what the fuck? And then people were like, yeah, you need to learn how to be alone. And it's but people in relationships never learn how to be alone. And one of my most fundamental beliefs is that bitches in relationships cannot give advice about how to operate as a single person. I'm not saying that I'm, as a bitch with a boyfriend, completely barred from it, but I just do think there's this condescension that people in relationships engage with. And if you've ever felt that, I'm here to confirm that you are not crazy. When I was single and after I turned 24, I definitely felt pity from my friends when I would talk about being single or dating, even when I was perfectly content. My last year of law school, I didn't focus on relationships at all because I really needed to focus on graduating. I've talked about how much I hated law school and how miserable that experience was on top of having a traumatic brain injury. And that, pretty much all of 2022, yeah, honestly, all of 2022, I didn't really have any, serious romantic interests. I think I would go on a date, maybe once every couple of months, just because my friends were you should probably put yourself out there. But I had no interest, and I was really happy. And I remember some of my friends in relationships kind of being oh, well, you'll find someone eventually. And it was yeah, I am aware of that, but I'm just in a season of my life where it doesn't make sense for it. And I felt like everyone felt bad for me, even though I didn't feel bad for myself. And then it made me feel worse because then when I did feel, loneliness, which I think is natural and a human emotion, as I said back in some of my earliest episodes of the podcast, I think wanting to be in a relationship and wanting human companionship is natural. And I've reiterated this, you know, over almost 2 years, coming up on 2 years. Wow, guys, this is a lot. But coming up on almost 2 years. We are companion mammals who are designed to want companionship and romantic and platonic and familial love with each other. And so I don't think it makes sense to pretend like we also aren't built for romantic love and that you don't have that capacity and that it's not a valid thing to want. It's a beautiful thing to have. It's a shame when you don't have it, but I think there's a way that people approach, like, I don't know. I don't even want to say it was pity because it felt like a lot of people were telling themselves, like, I'm glad I'm not in your position. And I remember that so strongly that I was like, you know, when I get into a relationship and when I'm finally seen as, like, especially as a woman, being recognized as, like, having made it, because not every relationship that you're in gets the serious title. Like, whenever people sense that you're in a serious enough relationship that's going towards whatever your culture or environment considers as serious, for me, like, that's marriage, but I know for some people that's, like, having kids with someone or living with someone, whatever. Whenever you get to the point where you're in, like, capital S serious relationship is when people start treating you different. And I was like, when I get there, I never want to pass on the treatment that I got when I was single, and I want to kind of continue to advocate on I don't know, that sounds a bit, like, self-righteous and preachy, but I want to. You are not crazy, is what I'm trying to say, and you are not alone in feeling this way. And I definitely had someone tell me that, like, oh, you're just bitter because you're not in a relationship, and it's like, no, like, I'm definitely sensing what people are putting down, and it fucking sucks. I hated it. And this whole idea of, like, well, as a single person, you just need to get good at being alone, and it's like, the people in relationships don't have to do that, especially if you're in a long-term relationship. Like, once you've been dating someone for a couple of years, you're never functionally really alone, especially when you start living with that person. Like, when your every day is with another human being, you never have to operate as an alone person again, right? You can be in an unhappy relationship where you certainly feel alone, but that is very different to, like, another human being is living in your house versus, like, singleness, where you may not have that. And if you don't have a roommate, like, living alone, being single, having done that, like, sometimes it can get quite lonely. Like, I often wanted friends at my house because I was quite lonely and bored. Not saying that your I don't know. I hope that you guys know that I don't have to give a bunch of disclaimers and go into a bunch of, like, well, your partner shouldn't become your whole world, and I'm not saying that, but there's just this empty space on, like, a Tuesday night where, like, maybe nobody can hang out, and you still have your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your partner or whatever you call them, whoever they already, like, companionship and love, and someone who accepts you without the anxiety of, like, do they like my hair this way? Like, when you're in a deep relationship and it's like, yes, this is about the physical, but it's also about the spiritual. Like, I love this person's essence. You never have to be comfortable with being fucking alone in that situation. That's kind of the whole point of being in a relationship. Just stop getting gaslighted. Stop getting gaslit by bitches with boyfriends. It's a very nefarious group, even if I say this, if I'm in that group myself. Because having been in that group, I hear the way that sometimes girls in established relationships talk about single girls, and it's very fucked up. Like, oh yeah, her life is great, but she just doesn't have anyone. And it's like, she's in, like, a very rigorous academic program, you know, or she, like, has, like, a really important job, or she's, like, traveling. Like, maybe getting a boyfriend's not the forefront of her mind, you know? And it's crazy because I would say that this is a heterosexual thing, but I've also noticed this sometimes amongst, like, queer people as well, where, I don't know, that pressure for women to be partnered, that is ubiquitous, whether you're dating women or you're dating men. It just reveals itself in a different font. Lesbians, chime in the comments if you agree or disagree. But yeah, it is crazy. And just a lot of the advice that you give to single people, like, you have to be comfortable being alone before you get in a relationship. One of my best friends has been with her husband since they were 14. The last time she was single was middle school, when Justin Bieber's first album was #1 on the charts. Like, that's how long it's been she's been in a relationship. Do you think that at any point she ever, like, learned how to function by herself? Do you think anyone who's been in a relationship that long, especially a relationship where you're growing up and, like, maturing as a person with your partner, do you think they've ever learned to be, like, alone? Like, you need to be comfortable being alone, or you need to fix all of your issues. Being in a relationship can fix some of your issues. It's not going to fix all of them, and I'm not saying, like, if you have deep psychological wounds, you should get a therapist and not, you know, a girlfriend, but men really needed to hear that one. But this idea that, like, oh, you have to fix yourself because you have to be perfect for your partner. That's kind of like the whole point of having a partner, though, is you'll accept you when you're imperfect and you can, like, work through your issues together. And, like, being in a relationship has certainly, like, healed me in ways. It just, like, I'm a more optimistic boyfriend because of Trey. Lore drop. I don't think I've ever said his name on here. I mean, it's not a secret. You would know this if you go to my Instagram. I like reference him by name in my posts and my stories. But if you don't, and you should, shameless plug, at Hot Weird Girl, that's girl with a 0 instead of an I, you would know that. But yeah, like I am a more optimistic, positive, peppy person. Since being with Trey, some of his personality rubbed off on me. It's a positive change that not only I've observed, but like everyone who's known me for a long period of time has known. Like there's a renewed sense of hope that I have. That certainly healed me. I guess I could have gone to a therapist to fix that, but you know, I got a boyfriend. I don't know. The nefarious girl, and then it's always around Valentine's Day. Like, you just need to love yourself. Being single does not mean you don't love yourself. And like, do you think that, I don't know, because fundamentally, I think that love is about luck. I think that's the shitty part of it all, is like love is such a beautiful and wonderful thing, and I do believe that everyone has a soulmate, or maybe multiple soulmates out there. But maybe you just don't have the luck to be living where they live or in the right circumstances at the right time so that they know you exist. You know what I mean? Maybe the love of your life is in Timbuktu, but you don't speak their language and you guys aren't in the same country and you have no way of getting in contact with each other. Like, that's a real heartbreak and tragedy that you're not getting the person who's definitely out there for you, whether you believe that they were designed by God. I mean, I don't know, I'm an atheist, but whether you believe that they were designed by like God or fate or just like the beautiful fairies that live in our universe, mermaids, dragons. And wait, where was I going with this? Because then I started thinking too hard about dragons and I started thinking too hard about the book that I was reading. Okay, try to focus. I'm trying to do a brain blast. I feel like I was making a really good point. Fuck, where was I going with this? I gotta think about this. Okay, I was talking about the lore drop. How are you guys doing? You know, let me know how you're doing in the comments. Leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I guess this is a good time to tell you that now. I forgot to say that last time. But yeah, please interact with the video. Every little view helps so much. And please share with a friend. And if you are really loving this video format, let me know. And maybe there's only like little video specific things that we could do with each other, you know, just because like you guys are the real one. No, you're not the real ones. Everyone who listens is a real one. But you guys are real as fuck for showing up and watching the YouTube footage. The behind the scenes. What the fuck was I talking about? Oh, yeah, luck. Just the luck to meet your person. And I don't think it's about like the effort that you put in. Like, yeah, you can maximize your odds, you know, you maximize your odds in any way, gambling or trying to make sure that you have the best odds to get the job or whatever it is you're trying to pursue. But I feel like love is the one thing that the amount of effort you put into it does not guarantee a result. And that's really, I mean, that's in opposition to everything we believe, especially as Americans. I know not everyone who listens to this is an American, but as an American, like our viewpoint is very much like hard work begets success. And so many people put hard work into dating and they're just unsuccessful for so many reasons beyond their control, right? Like one of the reading requirements of the first episode was about, you know, what's happening with Gen Z men and women and sort of the shift that we're changing, the fact that you don't have any control over the dating pool. You don't have any control over the fact that it's harder to date right now. And instead of people, you know, like reconciling and grieving with you and recognizing that this is a thing that's happening to you and it's completely unfair, everybody tries to make it like you're the problem, like your standards are too. I mean, some of this feels cliche because people have been talking about this for like, you know, since the history of dating. I just kind of wish that I had had someone to tell me this back when I was single, and not in like a you'll meet your person or like it's all gonna be okay, but just like, no, you're not crazy. Like everyone is kind of being a bitch to you. They are engaging in this, like, I don't want to hear, like, you need to be good living alone, and, like, it's just about how you feel about yourself, about someone who gets to have a person to do something with every day. Like, when you're battling real feelings of loneliness, when you have to, like, invent a person that you believe is, like, holding you to sleep at night, because that's how dry your love life has gotten, and then a person who's getting, like, cuddled and their forehead kissed before bed, looking sloppy as all fuck, like, you're worried about, like, oh, I can't skip the gym this week because I want to be attractive enough to, like, you know, get someone to court me, and they're, you know, like 5 years into the relationship kind of giving up on their looks a little bit. Okay, that is a bit mean, but you know where I'm going with this. It's like, it's really just about how you feel about yourself. And it's like, bitch, how the fuck would you know? And I have never forgotten that. One thing about me is I'll never forget how bad I felt about something, and even when I'm up, I'll always remember how I felt when I was down and try to not be that bitch who was stepping on me. That was a terrible church analogy. But I just wanted to get that out of the way on Thanksgiving. Someone on live was like, oh, I think this would be a good topic to talk about on the podcast. And it kind of touches on things that I've talked about in the past. There are no like real rules to dating, that it's luck, that your ability to find a boyfriend or girlfriend or a romantic partner in this life is not indicative of your worth as a person, which is really hard to assert yourself and feel, because everyone, when you're single, makes you feel like your worth as a person is tied to the fact that you don't have a partner. And I think Trevor Noah, the former host of The Daily Show or whatever, he had a really good interview clip about it. Maybe that can be one of the recommended readings this week. But he was talking about, let me write that on my magazine. But he was talking about how so much of like adult society is set up for a two-partner system, that like you cannot bring your best friend to events the way that you can bring your partner. Right. I even see it in the condescension whenever people talk about like, oh, I don't want like some random Hinge date coming to my wedding, and that's why I won't give the single person a +1, which I think is rude. There's this girl on TikTok, her name is Hannah Stella, and I don't know if she's still making content now. But she always said that weddings are parties and parties are for guests, and I understand that weddings are very expensive, and perhaps hopefully in the next year I get to find out like, how ridiculous it really is. But there is this condescension that I've noticed people who are planning weddings talk about when it comes to +1s, and they're like, because I don't want someone random or like someone whose relationship is not going to last. You don't know that your marriage is going to last. Divorce rate is lower than it was, 10, 20 years ago, and people are getting married at the same rate. So yeah, people are staying together more often than they were 20, 30 years ago. But you don't know that your relationship won't be done in 3 years. Why can't this random person just bring someone that hasn't passed the approved credentials? If they went out to the courthouse and got married tomorrow, you would recognize it as valid and legit, but because they don't meet like your arbitrary test, and it's often coming from couples who fight. Like, nobody is snarkier about who's in a real relationship, who's in a valid relationship, than someone who's in a fucked up relationship. Okay, that's the other thing that you learn. There's this whole secret like initiation you get as a woman once you're in a capital S serious relationship, where people just start telling you about the shit that they go through trying to be relatable. I made a TikTok about this week. I'm in a heterosexual relationship. Yes, I do not identify with heterosexuality. I do not identify with hetero norms because they're depressing as fuck. Every year, the Jimmy Kimmel Show rolls out a little segment about how little men know about their wives, girlfriends, just female romantic partners. And it's not even things like, oh, what's her favorite book? Which to me would, you know what I mean? Or like, it's things like, what are the color of their eyes? And then they can't tell you. They can't tell you middle names. They can't tell you siblings' names. They can't tell you parents' names. They can't tell you where they were born. They can't tell you where they went to high school. They can't tell you where they went to college, what they majored in. Like, they can't tell you basic demographic information that a LinkedIn profile could let you know. I could know someone's like educational background and the color of their eyes just by going on their LinkedIn, by going on their Facebook. And it's like, they haven't put that effort into you. And then it's all played off for like laughs and jokes. And other women play it off as laughs and jokes. Other women laugh so hard at the domestic incompetence of men that men feel too comfortable, like, because they go to sleep at night knowing that their absolute, domestic terrorism is put off for laughs. But me, I don't think shit's funny about a man. And to quote myself from that TikTok, I would have to be tranquilized to take my hands off of Trey's neck if he said half of that fucking shit to me that other girls are laughing about. Like, what the fuck is funny? I am a little nervous for the day that I have to say, like, oh, I have a husband, not because I'm embarrassed of my relationship or him. I love him very dearly. He's my soulmate. I could talk about him for hours, so I'm trying not to do that. But I could. But not because I'm embarrassing him at all, but because, like, saying that I have a husband puts me in the same category as women who let men live in their house and they don't do chores. And they're like, oh, yeah, like, he left the bottle in the infant's mouth and my newborn could have choked, but that's just how guys are. And it's like, no, like, I would kill him. I would genuinely rather just use the life insurance money and raise my baby as like a single mother and a widow than have an incompetent man in my house. Other women expect you to bond over that. Other women expect you to like kiki and laugh. And that's what I'm talking about, the secret society that you get initiated into to like talk about this stuff, where they'll just tell you like war crimes, just like crimes that are an affront to your dignity. And they're like, but you know, that's what you can expect out of a serious relationship with a man. And it's like, no, I do not accept this. I do not accept this for myself. So, you know, in the same way that we came up with like metrosexuality is the word for straight men who care about fashion and wipe their ass, like there has to be something for me. I do not identify with this. Do not identify with this at all. Oh my god, it's been almost 20 minutes. And what was I trying to write down? Terminova. Oh, I just accidentally disconnected the mic. This gives me an opportunity to write this down. Partner set up for 2 people. That's a good interview, but it's not going to be the recommended reading. I just accidentally disconnected. What's new? But I think, you know, I think that's that on that segment. That's all I really had to say. Stop getting bamboozled, and I wish people in relationships stop being so smug about it. Like, you could talk about how great and how happy you are without, like, doing it in a way where it's clear that you just really want to shit on single people. And I know what you're doing, and I won't let you get away with it. Another thing that I wanted to talk about that's really piqued my interest is there is currently a debate on TikTok. I should probably put this out there now. One thing that I've been thinking a lot about my TikTok presence is that I participated way too much in chronically online discourse, and I very much find that embarrassing now, and I don't plan on doing that going forward. And I've reset my TikTok For You page algorithm so that mostly what I see is like baking, fashion, a lot of cats, a lot of cat content. I don't know if you've gotten this vibe based on the fact that I talk about my cat like every single episode, and I'm obsessed with him, and we're in this like codependent like relationship where like I complain that he's too clingy, and then at the same time like there was like a 2-week stretch where he wanted to sleep outside of the bed, and I was like fucking devastated. And then eventually, like, we had to have a whole talk because I was like, you just don't love me anymore. And cats speak English. They know what they're doing, right? So obviously I'm a crazy cat lady, so I love to look at cats a bunch on the internet. But I love to look at cake decorating. And so there's been this big hullabaloo where, like, Walmart is making these heart day cakes. And these, like, TikTok home bakers, who this is not to, like, shit on people who make baked goods out of their house. Because I'm sure that this group of people on TikTok who are only united by the fact that they're uploading TikTok content and that they're also complaining about the price of, like, you know, Walmart is undercutting them in their home business. But just, it makes me reflect on the fact that, like, people will go out and buy anything, which is a bit weird considering that this economy everyone agrees in is, like, so bad, and so many people are under the impression that they're living hand to mouth, like, paycheck to paycheck, and they're barely making it. Like, something that comes up a lot in, like, the Caleb Heron? No, I feel like Caleb Heron's a really funny guy. Oh my god. One of the Calebs is a guy that I'm trying to go with my friend to see him when he has shows because he's so funny. He was on Z-Way. I'm so bad with names. And the other guy is like a financial influencer. I don't think his financial advice is that good, but he basically has people in these ridiculous financial situations. Like, they'll come in and they'll be like, yeah, I have $60,000 in credit card debt. I don't grocery shop. I just DoorDash. And he's like, what's your excuse for that? And they're like, I'm just too lazy to cook. And he's like, okay, so you spent like 20 grand on DoorDash this year. Like, I think you could have maybe cut that down and not put it all on your credit card. And then like Dave Ramsey, who does the same thing, where it's like not good financial advice, but sometimes it's just like it's like financial entertainment. But sometimes the vibes of people complaining about the economy, and I just want to state at the outset that this is not to say that like poverty is not a real consideration. People are certainly sliding into poverty, especially with like what, you know, Voldemort is going to continue to do with upcoming legislation. But this is just to say that, like, I cannot believe this economy where people are buying anything, where, like, TikTok Shop does numbers, where Temu does numbers, where Shein does numbers, where this was the record-breaking Black Friday in 2024, is also the same economy where people are complaining about the price of eggs. And it feels a little bit like the guys who call into those financial advice shows, and they're like, yeah, hey, Dave, my family and I are living paycheck to paycheck, you know, and then he's like, well, what are your expenses? And they're like, oh, you know, like, mortgage is this is this, and then I have a $2,000 car payment because I have a Bugatti in the driveway. And he's like, okay, do you need a car, right? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, do you need that car? And they're like, yeah, I think so. And then you're like, how did we get here from the cakes? Don't worry, I'm bringing it all back around. The cakes made me think about the fact that people just buy anything. Like, people just buy anything, and then also complain about this perception that like things are so bad. But I think it's because places like, and this is a theory that I'm developing, so this may not be the full thought now, but the internet has offered the ability for everyone to live like kings. Everything on the internet is algorithmically curated to please you. Everything that you view on the internet has been like dictated by this algorithm and AI to, you know, please you, keep you attached on whatever platform longer. And then they sell that data, so then it shows you like what products you should be interested in. Oh, you Googled something once, well, we're going to show you that product again and again and again. So your little mammal brain really wants to buy it. You know, you can get everything, especially because of COVID and the gig economy, like you can get everything from your phone to your house and you don't even have to go outside and interact. And isn't that so great? And everything is for you. And now you can participate in fashion to this degree where you feel like I get to have a new wardrobe, you know, a different wardrobe every season, even though that's only ever been possible for the exuberantly wealthy because I can buy clothes, you know, off of the exploited slave labor of people in other countries, right? Like Shein offered the ability. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with like going out and buying new clothes, but I'm saying the cheapness of Shein and Temu and honestly other fast fashion places, like the places that don't often get called fast fashion, like Fashion Nova, Zara, Princess Polly, Abercrombie and Fitch. Like a lot of these mall brands are still fast fashion. They're just doing it at a much slower rate in comparison to Shein, which like we talked about in that fast fashion episode is doing it at a really exorbitant like high rate. And we're sort of coming to this place where everyone can feel like, you know, for a very, very low price, I can live exuberantly, right? Like I talked about, I cannot remember which podcast episode, but people who are making like $100,000 a year, which is a great salary, but then you just simply can't live like a millionaire and people think that's poverty. And I kind of think we're in this weird place where like people want to buy everything and then also be really shocked when, how do I phrase this? This is a one take wonder after all. I'm not going to like write it down and try to figure it out. Where people want to buy everything and then they're either super angry that like everything's not as cheap as they can get off of the exploited labor of others, but I think that point's kind of been made by other people and already been well done, which is not how I like my steaks. Or they feel like, how do I put this? I really have to think about how to put this. They feel like that they're owed this lifestyle that's out of reach for them. And I hope that that doesn't come across like I'm trying to say that everyone needs to live like a feudal peasant, because luxury is not simply the opposite of necessity, right? Like just because it's not necessary to live doesn't mean that it's a luxury. Again, we are not feudal peasants, but just to say that like everyone thinks they're owed this degree of like lavish living that they've been tricked into because every part of our lives is convenience. One of the YouTube video scripts that I'm working on is talking about how the villain in WALL-E was convenience culture, and it's, you know, I went back and I watched that movie a couple weeks ago, and I've just been thinking about it ever since and going back and watching specific scenes. When I first watched it as a kid and when I was watching it as like a teenager, which, oh my god, I cried so much, but I was thinking about the fact that it seemed like the people were trapped by the ambiguous corporation to stay in the chairs. That's why I read it as a kid, but watching it back as an adult, I realized that like the ship was just trying to keep them happy with consumerism, and that because they were so complacent, they never actually interacted with the world or stimuli around. Like there's that scene where the two lovers in WALL-E, I forget their names, but they're finally like, you know, the computers go down and they're like, wait, I've never actually been in the pool. And then they realizing that they're enjoying swimming because they were so attached to the convenience of their phones and being told what to buy and what to consume and how to think and how to act. And how convenience, just blind complacency to convenience was really the villain in WALL-E as much as the dead humans who had polluted the earth to the extent that they needed to leave and get on ships and live in space. So that's just something that I'm thinking about why I'm going on like this little rant. And you're like, again, Alexia, what does that have to do with cakes? I promise you, we're getting there. I said it because people are buying anything, but then there's also this weird belief that I think goes along with like these home bakers, because these people on TikTok who are making this fuss, they're not bakeries. They're not like brick and mortar establishments. Like they're home bakers who are kind of like, you know, like I'm a stay-at-home mom making treats, or I'm, you know, not an actual professional who went to culinary school which when you get to certain levels of baking, like, you do need to have gone to culinary school. Like, learning how to temper chocolate, like, I could not temper, I mean, I'm sure I couldn't learn how to temper chocolate. There are certain things that you really just need that culinary education to do that I think really should factor into a price. But there are a lot of, like, home bakers, like, people just doing it in their house who are maybe subject to, like, whatever your local state's laws for home baking is. Sometimes they're called cottage laws. I don't know. I'm a lawyer, but I'm not an expert on that. I just happen to know that there's something like it. And this weird idea that everybody has, where, like, the individual is more trusted than the systems. I talked about this in the anti-intellectualism episodes. And if at this point in the episode, if you're starting from the newer ones, I would really recommend starting from the beginning, because each episode sort of builds upon itself like a Lego block. So, you know, jumping into it at, like, whatever this is, like episode 80 or 81, not counting the bonus episodes, I think this is closer to, like, episode, like, 86. Oh my god, we're so close to 100 episodes. But this idea that, like, the only individual you can trust because of the degradation of the trust of systems is the small self, and the way that people are able to exploit that by, you know, making what's just a balled up box cake and then slapping a bunch of fondant on it and trying to sell that off as, like, luxury, and then, you know, being kind of bitchy on TikTok to try to get people to buy into it. But it made me think of this Atlantic article that I was a huge fan of. I had the Atlantic sent to my house. So this is from the February 2025 article. I can also gift articles, so this will be this will be the referenced reading. But this is by Anne Applebaum, and it's called "The New Rasputin's Anti-Science Mysticism is Enabling Autocracy Around the Globe." It's a fantastic article that I'd like to dive into another time, but there were certain little portions that I kind of want to use as, like, the research backing to this, because it really touched on what the author calls new obscurantism, and she describes it as, like, a new emerging political movement on what we used to call the far right, but that term is no longer all encompassing. You know, she says, quote, "Tempting though it is to describe them as far right, this old-fashioned terminology doesn't quite capture whom or what they represent. The terms right wing and left wing come from the French Revolution, when the nobility, who sought to preserve the status quo, sat on the right side of the National Assembly, and the revolutionaries, who wanted democratic change, sat on the left. Those definitions began to fail us a decade ago, when part of the right in both Europe and North America began advocating not caution and conservatism, but the destruction of existing democratic institutions. In its new incarnation, the far right began to resemble the old far left. In some places, the two began to merge." Unquote. I don't know if I agree with that last sentence, but I still think it's something to chew on. Okay, and then, quote, "The philosophers of the Enlightenment, whose belief in the possibility of law-based democratic states gave us both the American and French revolutions, railed against what they called obscurantism, darkness, obfuscation, and irrationality. But the prophets of what we might call the new obscurantism," oh my god, this is like the kid you don't call in a popcorn reading, "new obscurantism offer exactly those things: magical solution, an aura of spirituality, superstition, and the cultivation of fear." Unquote. It's this specific, like, mysticism that I think goes around these, like, home remedies. Like, the article opens up to, you know, describing this Romanian politician who is, trust me, these pieces will all come together. Quote, "Frosty pine trees rim the edge of an icy lake. Snow is falling. Spa music plays in the background. A gray-haired man with a pleasant face stands behind the lake. He begins to undress. He is going swimming," he explains, "to demonstrate his faith and his opposition to science, to technology, to modernity. I don't need Facebook, I don't need the internet, I don't need anybody. I just need my heart," he says. As he swims across the lake, seemingly unbothered by the cold, he continues, "I trust my immune system because I have complete trust and faith in its creator, in God. My immunity is part of the sovereignty of my being." Unquote. that sort of belief in like this mysticism, this magical thinking, very much manifests itself in the idea that because institutions cannot be trusted, you have to put your faith in normal people, and why someone in the first place would want to buy food from a regular home baker. I'm not saying that home bakers and pulling up on people to buy a plate has not been a thing for forever. I'm just saying I'm noticing the way that they're marketing themselves. A lot of these like home small businesses, especially like small businesses who almost want to eschew the definition of small business, because yes, they are a small business, but they're not like a brick and mortar establishment. They pose themselves as like going against the grain, going against what's expected of them, going against the establishment, is very much like on a very small level. If we were to think about like Donald Trump's drain the swamp thing and like how there's all corruption, and the article really goes into that, is this belief that they're doing it alternatively, and so that's what makes these types of things so attractive. Like, yes, I like to buy from, you know, like farmers markets and stuff because I trust that they're probably not using the same chemicals that like Monsanto would put on their fruit, which I'm not going down a pipeline, okay? Like, that just is a fact. And then we also get to this very weird point where people like this can sort of thrive. Like, it's not really about the cakes or the home bakers at all. It's just the way that they talk about themselves is like, well, what I'm doing is better than Walmart because you can trust me because I'm not this big corporation. I'm just a small little person. And this mysticism that goes into it. Okay. So, you know, quote, in a world where conspiracy theories and nonsense cures are widely accepted, unquote. That's the only part of this that's relevant. But it just goes on to point out like these conspiracies and these nonsense cures and the power of like this little person who is able to get a lot of power, particularly on social media and particularly to promote their business, even though they're totally engaging in like capitalism, which you would think would be the antithesis? Yes, antithesis. You know when you read words a lot, but you don't say them a lot out loud? Which would almost sort of be the antithesis of what, you know, like this whole don't trust establishments would. But I don't know, it's very much in line of that, like, you don't need a job, you just need to work for yourself, as if running your own business isn't like a million times more stressful. That's a separate topic for a separate time. But this article talks about how the elite are specifically curating these feelings to lead to governments like oligarchies, right? So, quote, in the hands of the new obscurationists who actively promote fear of illness, fear of nuclear war, fear of death, fear of dread and anxiety are powerful weapons. And again, like, you would not think that these two things are connected with the cake maker. I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to put down, because I feel like if you get it, it would be such a good point. I hope I'm not losing you in the lecture. But, you know, quote, this rising international elite is creating something very different, a society in which superstition defeats reason and logic, transparency vanishes, and the nefarious actions of political leaders are obscured behind a cloud of nonsense and distraction, unquote. On a small level, that is, we will see the rise of these, like, people who posit themselves as small establishments, and so they can automatically get your trust in a way that these others cannot. And I think in a way that's how, like, sort of an undiscussed angle when I was talking about how everyone gets to be convenient little kings in their own kingdom, is also that, yes, we recognize that places like Shein and other fast fashion companies are huge conglomerates, but also because they're able to, like, well, we're not the big guy, we're the little guy. Because if you have followed Shein for a long time, that's how they were marketing themselves, you know, like, I think it was like 8 years ago. I think I purchased something from like one of the prototypes of the Shein website, like what we now know is like Shein. This whole idea that, like, you can trust me, internet user, as I tell you about how carrots are going to improve your eyesight, because the carrots kind of look like eyes, because I'm not one of those to be trusted. It's just an interesting manifestation when we often talk about how this manifests through, like, political ideology and, you know, sort of the huge macro consequences of, like, you know, Donald Trump and other, as the article would call them, like, new obscurationists, but really we're describing like a very right phenomena that combines mysticism and anti-science. But how does it manifest on sort of an individual micro level? And I think this is one of the ways. If you'd like me to explain, leave comments if you understood, or send questions. I don't know, it was very interesting to me. It was something that I made a ton of notes. If you're watching on YouTube, like in the margins as I was reading, and I was like, this is so, you know, it's all connected. I see this shit. We're almost 40 minutes in and I have not discussed Kendrick Lamar. I fear this is where the episode ends. You're gonna beat my ass. I know. I'm sorry. I was, surgery went well, but I was definitely a lot more tired than I thought I would be. God, I do have so many things to say about Kendrick Lamar, though. No, I really will just have to put out a bonus episode. I have watched the performance like 20 times at this point, and there were so many things that I just didn't catch in the beginning that I kind of do now, but I really just wanted to talk about this real consequence of like anti-intellectualism and this distrust for systems, and how it is still a system that very much wants to promote like people making money and getting rich and entrepreneurship, but just in the guise that they're doing it, not like the big man, not like the system. If you like this episode and you're listening on YouTube, please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast, please share. It helps so much. I will talk to you guys later this week because I really do promise I will come out with that Kendrick episode. As always, feel free to send in topic suggestions, and I hope you like this, and I hope this was interesting. And yeah, happy Black History Month. Mwah, bye. And that is a wrap on that. Like I said, please send in topic suggestions. Don't forget to tune in this week for the breakdown of Kendrick Lamar's video, and I have a YouTube video coming out this weekend. So check it out. Mwah, love you. Bye.